Ladies and gentlemen, this room today is filled with leaders who shape India and how India builds, sells, and serves with intelligent systems.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. It is today such an important and landmark event and a summit powered by Salesforce.
I'm at MIT. I'm in a kind of a unique lab. The FutureTech lab is based in the Computer Science and AI lab. So we have lots of computer scientists and engineers, but we're also based in the Sloan Management School. And so that means that we are thinking about both the business side and the technical side of AI. And what I want to talk to you about today is what we are learning about how AI can be used for discovery, for doing science.
These are just not values written on the wall. We live these values. And we know, especially in the agentic era, where there is so much that we are working on data, so much talk about what happens if there is a data breach, so much talk about what happens if you give a wrong answer, what happens about hallucination. And you know, the bigger the data sets, the more the hallucination. When you are talking about all of that, for us, these things are very important because we cannot in any manner breach the trust that our customers repose in us.
Slack is the AI native conversational tool product that we actually have from Salesforce. Because for the conversation to happen, it needs to be in the context of work. All of the people, the data, the workflows that you have already built, the actions that you need to take, all of that needs to be provided in a unified interface for your employees, and that is where Slack comes into action here.
Kavya can also mark one of the cases. Let's say she has resolved any of these cases. Select that case, just type in closed, and Sarah just does that in seconds. So what you just saw isn't just convenience, it's operational efficiency.
Now, we know case is urgent and it is negative in sentiment, but what more? Can we find a resolution for this? No, right? Not yet. So earlier, any rep out there would have just gone through relevant knowledge articles and derive an action plan. But with a click of a button, all the support rep has to do is given a prompt saying that, could you please generate a resolution plan for me? So in no seconds, Agentforce will pull up all the relevant details from the knowledge article, it could be from a product documentation or training materials, and lay out a very crisp plan for this particular solution.
And what were some of these challenges which did you go on later to measure what kind of outcomes were driven through Salesforce?
Yes, so once we started automating digitalizing our entire journey, we always believed in transparency as an organization. We wanted to have our customer relationship very transparent at all times. So when we digitalized, we kind of started seeing metrics around. So we realized that we have a lot of clarifications which gets logged than actual bugs and issues in cases.
Patrick, you often talk about hidden drivers of human behavior, and Scott, in a crisis situation, a negotiation, emotions really run high, right? So what are the common biases leaders develop that you've seen when you work with the corporate world, and how can they actually overcome them?
The mistake that most leaders, particularly from a negotiation perspective, is it's win at all costs. It's win-lose. It's trying to get a bigger slice of a fixed size pie rather than trying to expand the size of the pie. And what lies behind that mistake is a lack of emotional regulation. And it's no secret that the reason why the #1 skill of the world's best negotiators is emotional self-regulation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things. One, I think, is myopia. So that's a tendency to view things very much from your own perspective and not be able to get out of that bubble. And we see a lot of business decisions where things go quite wrong because of that. I mean, Jaguar's rebrand, probably an example of that. I mean, lots of rebrands lately, Cracker Barrel as well. And you kind of think, what were they thinking? Well, they all kind of have the same perspective in that boardroom, and they're unable to see things from, say, their customer or an audience's perspective.
AI is a directional understanding of what the customer's behavior is, but that does never determine what we or how we see the customer when we are dealing with, at least in the health industry, I would say, or even in insurance industry. The bad side of AI, I would say, is the kind of claims that we get are fully photoshopped.
You are having something for API management, you're having something for, you'll have multiple ESB kind of, enterprise service bus is still legacy. Or you may have some RPA running here, you'll have some AI enterprise. All of those are disparate. Just as applications or your product or whatever, your core banking is disparate from your core HRMS, all these technologies that you're using are also disparate. They have no connection to each other. There is some manual intervention happening in your own enterprise there, which is the reason these things happen.
And what's the conversion that's happening? I think one important thing in the whole demand sensing is that, so these are some of the things, both online and offline, that you try and get the demand, you try and understand the demand much better. Eventually what you want to do is that, now, let's say 20 years back, you could sell X amount of SKUs.
In these other cases, we need new tools to do it, right? We need to build processes around it to take advantage of it where it's good and not to incur all of these costs where it's not good. Okay, another limitation, what I call adversarial AI usage. So I want you to think about hiring, right? We see this all the time now. I see this in my lab, right? People submit things, job applicants, right?
So I have a couple of mindsets which came out of the research I did for the submarine sandwich brand here. Let's just pick one in the interest of time. Let's go for Working Bite because it's here. These are people who are very busy, they don't have food at home, and they use a food delivery app because they're stressed and overwhelmed, and they're more likely to be looking at calories and imagery. These people tend to be more likely to be female, younger, more urban, in terms of personality, more disagreeable. These are kind of yuppies, I guess you could say, like young professionals.
And so this experience, I ended up putting it together and transferring all the relevant skills into a book, which actually did better than I or the publishers thought, which then ended up in me going around the world delivering the secrets and the tools and the techniques from that. And again, one of the key things I learned, and just to set the scene here, is, would it surprise you to hear the kidnappers were easy to deal with?